My name is Vivian Tate and I am 34 years old. 11 days ago, my mother stood at the front of the Kellerman Ballroom at the Hargrove Park Hotel in Greenville, South Carolina, in front of 167 people, and announced to every parent, teacher, and school board member in that room that I had fabricated the research behind the literacy program that bears my name. The program that has been running in 14 elementary schools across 3 counties for the past 6 years. The program that has served over 4,000 children. She had a folder. Navy blue, the kind with the brass clasp on the front. She set it on the podium with both hands the way you set down something you want to look like evidence. She tapped it once with one finger. And she said, in the careful voice she uses when she wants to sound reluctant, when she wants to sound like a woman who hates to do what she is about to do, that she had concerns. That was the word she chose. Concerns. About the integrity of the work. About whether I had actually done what I said I had done, or whether I had borrowed heavily, her phrase, from a colleague whose name I had never given proper credit. What my mother did not know, what she could not have known, was that I had been carrying a white legal envelope in my bag for 3 days. Not because I had planned for that exact night, but because a woman I loved had handed it to me before she died and told me I would know when to open it. Before I tell you what happened when I finally opened it, please take a moment to like and subscribe. And drop your city and local time in the comments below. I read every single one of those, and I love knowing where you are when you find these stories. Now let me take you back to the beginning, to a yellow kitchen in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and a little girl who learned very early that some people in a family are meant to shine, and some are meant to hold the light. My mother's name is Patricia Tate, and she has always understood the value of a good presentation. When I was growing up, the house on Dunmore Street was the kind of house that looked, from the outside, like it held a happy family. Window boxes with geraniums in the summer. A wreath on the door at Christmas. My mother's car, a silver Buick she kept washed every Saturday morning, parked in the driveway at a precise angle. Patricia Tate cared deeply about what things looked like from the outside. What happened inside was a different matter entirely. I am the older of 2 daughters. My sister Kelsey is 3 years younger than me, and from the time she could walk, she was the one the house organized itself around. I don't say that with bitterness now. I say it because it is simply what was true, the way the floor plan of a house is true. Kelsey had the bigger bedroom. Kelsey had the piano lessons and the dance recitals and the new Easter dress every year from the department store on Main Street. I had the hand-me-down dress from our cousin Angie, the one that had a small bleach spot on the hem that my mother said you couldn't see if I stood right. I learned to read early. That was the thing nobody planned for. By the time I was 6, I was reading chapter books while Kelsey was still sounding out words in her primer. My 2nd grade teacher, Mrs. Odom, called my mother in February of that year and said I was exceptional, that I should be tested, that there were programs for children like me. My mother thanked her politely. She did not pursue the testing. What she did do, 3 weeks later, was enroll Kelsey in a reading enrichment program at the public library on Saturday mornings, because Kelsey was struggling and needed the help. I am not telling you this to make you feel sorry for me. I am telling you because it was the first time I understood the architecture of our family. The way resources flowed in one direction and attention flowed in one direction, and the word exceptional, when applied to me, somehow became a reason to do less rather than more. My father, Gary, worked at a machine parts distributor and came home most evenings smelling of oil and coffee. He was not a complicated man. He loved us both, I believe that, but he loved my mother more than he loved clarity, and so he followed her lead in all things domestic. When Patricia decided that Kelsey was the one who needed the piano lessons, Gary said that sounded fine. When Patricia decided that I was old enough to watch Kelsey after school so she could take an evening ceramics class, Gary said that sounded reasonable. He was a man who confused peace with agreement, and I spent a long time being angry at him for it before I understood that his particular weakness was its own kind of sadness. The person who saw me, the one who always saw me, was my great-aunt Cecile. Cecile Fontaine was my grandmother's younger sister, a retired schoolteacher who had spent 31 years teaching 4th grade in Greenville County and who lived alone in a small white house on Alderman Road with a porch that wrapped around 2 sides and a garden that she tended with the same seriousness other people reserve for legal documents. She had never married. She had, instead, spent her life paying very close attention to children. She came to Sunday dinner at our house twice a month, and she always brought something she had baked, a pound cake or a pan of sweet potato biscuits, and she always sat next to me. Not Kelsey. Me. She would ask me what I had been reading. She would listen to my answers the way adults almost never listen to children, without looking past me toward something else, without nodding too quickly. She listened like what I said mattered to the conversation she was having with me, not just to the one she was having with herself about what kind of aunt she was. When I was 9, she gave me a lined composition notebook, green cover, and told me to write down every idea I had about anything. Not stories, she said. Ideas. Observations. Things I noticed that other people didn't seem to notice. She said, "Vivian, the most important thing a mind can do is pay attention. Everything else comes after that." I filled 11 of those notebooks by the time I finished high school. When I was 12, I told Cecile that I wanted to be a teacher. She looked at me for a moment with those sharp gray eyes of hers and said, "You don't want to be a teacher. You want to understand how people learn. That's different. That's bigger." I didn't know what she meant then. I would spend the next 20 years figuring it out. Kelsey graduated high school with a 2.8 GPA and a full social calendar. My mother threw her a party in the backyard with a catered barbecue and a cake from the bakery on Pelham Road with Kelsey's senior portrait printed on the frosting. 51 people came. I had graduated 2 years earlier with a 4.0 and a scholarship to Clemson. My mother made a nice dinner. The 5 of us sat at the kitchen table. She bought a sheet cake from the grocery store. It said "Congratulations Vivian" in blue gel icing. I ate a slice and told her it was good. I don't want to linger in the wound of that. What I want to tell you is what I did with the scholarship. I studied education and developmental psychology at Clemson, and I was not just good at it, I was the kind of student professors remember. I graduated in 3.5 years, started a master's program in literacy education, and by the time I was 24, I was writing my thesis on early reading intervention in under-resourced elementary schools. My thesis advisor, Dr. Anita Howell, told me in her office one afternoon in November that my research design was the most rigorous she had seen from a master's student in 11 years. She said it quietly, not as a compliment, but as a fact. That was how Anita operated. She didn't flatter. She assessed. I moved back to Greenville after my master's because Cecile's health had started to decline. She had been diagnosed with a slow-moving cardiac condition at 79, and though she was still sharp and still gardening and still reading 2 books a week, she had begun to tire more easily, and I wanted to be close. I took a position as a reading specialist at Dunbar Elementary, a Title I school on the east side of the county where 68% of the students were reading below grade level by 3rd grade. That statistic is not abstract to me. I knew what it meant. I had watched what happened to children who were told, in 100 quiet ways, that their minds were not worth the investment. I had been one of them, in a different way, in a house on Dunmore Street where the investment always flowed in a different direction. So I built something. It started as a binder. An actual binder, 3 inches thick, white, with a clear sleeve on the cover where I had typed the words Tate Early Literacy Framework in 12-point font and slid the paper in. I spent 18 months developing the assessment protocols, the small group intervention sequences, the parent communication tools, the progress tracking system. I piloted it in 2 classrooms at Dunbar in the fall of my 2nd year. By spring, the 3rd grade reading scores in those 2 classrooms had improved by an average of 22 percentile points. The principal, a careful and skeptical man named Marcus Webb, asked me to expand it to 4 more classrooms the following year. By the time I was 28, the framework was running in 6 schools. By 30, it was in 14, across Greenville, Spartanburg, and Cherokee counties. The State Literacy Office had cited it in 2 reports. A regional education foundation had given me a grant for $87,000 to develop a training program for other reading specialists. I had hired 2 part-time staff members. I had a small office above a copy shop on Augusta Street with my name on the door. I had done all of this without a single dollar from my parents, without a single word of encouragement from my mother, and without once asking for either. Cecile came to the ribbon cutting when I opened the office. She was 81 by then, moving slowly, needing a cane, but she wore her good blue coat and pearl earrings, and she stood in the doorway of that little office and looked at the name on the glass and said, "There it is." Just that. There it is. I held her arm on the way back to the car and I did not cry, but I wanted to. She died 14 months later. A Tuesday morning in March, in her own bed, in the White House on Alderman Road, with the porch she loved and the garden she would not see bloom again that year. She was 82 years old. I was 32. I was the one who found her. I had a key, and when she didn't answer her phone by 9 in the morning, which was unusual, I drove over. She looked peaceful. The room smelled like lavender and old paper. There was a book open on the nightstand, a biography of a woman she had admired, and a glass of water that was still half full. On the kitchen table, she had left 3 things. A pot of coffee on the burner, still warm. A note that said, "Vivian, the coffee is for you. Drink it before it gets cold." And a white legal envelope with my name written on the front in her careful schoolteacher's hand, the letters even and deliberate, the way she had written everything her whole life. Beneath my name, she had written, "Open this when someone tries to take what you built." I took the coffee. I did not open the envelope. I put it in my bag and carried it home and put it in the drawer of my nightstand, and I thought about it sometimes in the months that followed, the way you think about something you are not ready for. I knew what Cecile had meant. I had learned, over 32 years, to read the temperature of my family. And the temperature had been changing. My mother had started paying attention to me again, which was never a comfortable sign. It began about 6 months after Cecile died. A phone call here, a text there. Patricia asking about the program, asking how many schools, asking whether the foundation grant had been renewed. Her voice had a quality I recognized from childhood, the warmth that arrived when there was a reason for warmth, the kind that had a spreadsheet behind it. I answered her questions. I kept the answers short. I watched and I waited. Then Kelsey called. Kelsey and I had a relationship that I would describe as politely distant. We were not enemies. We were not close. We were 2 women who shared a childhood and had drawn very different conclusions from it. Kelsey had married at 26, divorced at 29, and was now working as an event coordinator for a hotel chain based in Charlotte. She was good at her job. She had our mother's instinct for presentation and our father's easy social manner, and she could walk into a room of strangers and make them feel, within 20 minutes, that she had known them for years. She called me on a Thursday evening in September, 2 years after Cecile died. I was at my desk finishing a training module. She said she had been thinking about the literacy program and that she had an idea. She had a contact at the Hargrove Park Hotel, she said, where the Greenville County Schools Foundation held their annual gala every November. She thought she could get me a table. Get the program some visibility. Get us in front of the right donors. I said thank you. I said I would think about it. I did not say what I was thinking, which was that Kelsey had never once expressed interest in my work, and that my mother's fingerprints were all over this phone call. What I did was call Marcus Webb, who had been on the foundation's advisory board for 3 years, and ask him quietly whether there was anything I should know about the November gala. He paused in the way careful people pause when they are deciding how much to say. Then he told me that the foundation had announced a new award this year, the Greenville Literacy Leadership Award, and that my name had been submitted as a nominee by someone on the committee. He said he thought I should know, and that he had been planning to call me. I thanked him. I sat with that for a long time. Then I went to my nightstand drawer and I took out the white envelope and I held it in my hands. I did not open it yet. But I put it in my bag. And I left it there for 11 days. I want to pause here for a moment, because I think some of you watching this know exactly what that feeling is. The feeling of watching something build toward you, knowing it is coming, not knowing yet what shape it will take when it arrives. If you have ever been in a family where love was a transaction, where your accomplishments were only interesting to someone else when there was something in it for them, I want you to type the word "seen" in the comments. Just that one word. Because that is what I needed for so long, and I suspect some of you did too. And if this story is resonating, please subscribe. I make these for people who need to hear them, and it matters to me that you find them. Now, back to the story. The gala was on a Friday evening, November 8th. The Kellerman Ballroom at the Hargrove Park Hotel seats 220. That night, 167 people were in attendance, according to the Foundation's seating chart, which I had reviewed when I confirmed my table. I had a table of 4, myself, my colleague Dana Marsh, who had been my first hire and had helped me build the training program, Marcus Webb, and his wife. I wore a navy dress I had bought 3 years earlier from a consignment shop on Pleasantburg Drive for $45. It fit well. I had worn it to 2 grant presentations and a school board meeting, and it had served me fine each time. I did not buy a new dress. I did not feel the need to perform. My mother and Kelsey were also in attendance. I knew this because Kelsey had called 2 days before to confirm, with a brightness in her voice that had a quality I can only describe as rehearsed. She said she was so excited to be there to support me. I said that was kind. I did not say what I was noticing. The dinner was served at 7. The awards portion of the evening was scheduled for 8:30. I ate the salmon, which was acceptable, and I talked with Dana about the new assessment tool we were piloting in Cherokee County, and I watched the room the way I have always watched rooms, the way Cecile taught me to watch them, paying attention to what was actually happening rather than what was being performed. My mother was seated 3 tables away, near the center of the room, at a table with Kelsey and 4 people I did not recognize. She was wearing the cream cashmere she saved for occasions she considered important. Her hair was done. She looked, from across the room, like a woman who had every reason to be there. At 8:22, the Foundation's executive director, a woman named Carol Hensley, took the podium. She spoke for several minutes about the Foundation's work, about the schools they supported, about the importance of early literacy. She was warm and precise, and I liked her. Then she introduced the Greenville Literacy Leadership Award, the first time it had been given, and she said my name. I heard the applause begin. I stood. Dana touched my arm. Marcus nodded at me with a quiet satisfaction that I understood, because Marcus had watched me build this from the classroom up and he knew what it had cost. I walked toward the stage. And then my mother stood up. She did not stand to applaud. She stood the way a person stands when they have been waiting for their moment and the moment has arrived. She had the navy folder in her hands. I had not seen her carry it in. She must have had it under the table. She held it against her chest for just a second, and then she walked toward the podium with the particular confidence of a woman who has rehearsed her entrance. Carol Hensley saw her coming and her expression shifted, the way a host's expression shifts when something has gone off script. My mother stepped to the side of the podium, not behind it, beside it, and she said, In a voice that carried clearly across the room, "Carol, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I just need one moment. I have some concerns I think the Foundation should be aware of before this award is given." The room went quiet in the way rooms go quiet when something uncomfortable is happening and no one yet knows how uncomfortable it is going to get. My mother set the folder on the podium. She tapped it once. She said that she had been reviewing the history of the literacy framework that bore my name, and that she had come across information suggesting that the foundational assessment protocols had been developed in significant part by a former colleague of mine, a woman named Dr. Sandra Price, who had worked alongside me at Dunbar Elementary in the program's early years and who had not received proper attribution for her contributions. She said she had documents. She said she had emails. She said she had a statement from Dr. Price herself, and that she felt, as a member of this community and as someone who cared deeply about integrity in education, that she had an obligation to bring this forward before an award was given that might not be deserved. She said it in the careful, reluctant voice. The voice I had known my whole life. The voice that sounded like a woman who hated to do what she was doing. 167 people were watching. I was standing 6 feet from the podium with a microphone in my hand that I had not yet used. I want to tell you what I felt in that moment, because I think it matters. I felt, for about 4 seconds, the specific cold that comes when someone you have spent your whole life managing finally does the thing you always knew they were capable of. Not surprise. Not shock. The cold of confirmation. The cold of a person who has been right about something for a very long time and takes no pleasure in being right. My hands did not shake. I noticed that. I counted to 4. Then I reached into my bag. I had carried that envelope for 11 days. I had carried it because Cecile had handed it to me and told me I would know when to open it, and I had understood, on the night Marcus Webb called me about the nomination, that the time was coming. I had not opened it. I had simply kept it close, the way you keep something close when you trust the person who gave it to you. I broke the seal with my thumb. The envelope held 2 things. A folded letter, written in Cecile's hand, 3 pages, dated 18 months before her death. And a smaller sealed envelope inside, cream-colored, with a typed label that read, "To be presented to the Greenville County Schools Foundation or any relevant educational body as documentation of the Tate Early Literacy Framework's development and authorship." I unfolded the letter first. I read the first paragraph standing there at the edge of the stage, and I understood what Cecile had done. Carol Hensley was asking my mother to step back from the podium. My mother was saying she just needed a moment, she just needed them to look at the documents. Kelsey, I could see from where I stood, had not moved from her chair. She was sitting very still with her hands in her lap and an expression I could not quite read from that distance. I walked to the podium. My mother looked at me with the expression she uses when she wants to appear composed and is not. I said, very quietly, "Mom, please sit down." I did not raise my voice. I said it the way you say something you mean without needing volume to mean it. She did not sit down immediately. But she stepped back from the podium. and I faced the room. I said, "My name is Vivian Tate. I built the Tate Early Literacy Framework over the course of 8 years, beginning in the fall of 2016 at Dunbar Elementary School. I want to address what was just said, because the people in this room deserve the truth, and because I have documentation that makes the truth very clear." I held up the smaller cream envelope. I said, "This envelope was prepared by my great-aunt, Cecile Fontaine, a retired Greenville County schoolteacher with 31 years of service, before her death in March of 2022. It contains a notarized affidavit, signed by Cecile, along with copies of dated correspondence, development logs, and institutional records documenting the creation of every assessment protocol and intervention sequence in the framework. Cecile served as my informal research consultant and documentation witness from 2016 through 2019. She kept records because she was a teacher and teachers keep records. She had these materials notarized in September of 2020 because she understood that documentation is protection. I set the envelope on the podium. I did not open it there. I did not need to open it there. I said, "I will provide these materials to the Foundation's board for their review." I would also note that Dr. Sandra Price, who is referenced in the concerns just raised, left Dunbar Elementary in June of 2017, 9 months into the pilot year, before the framework's core architecture was complete. She was a valued colleague. She did not author this work. The documentation will show that clearly. The room was very quiet. Carol Hensley was standing to my left with an expression that had moved from alarmed to something more settled, the expression of a person who has been handed solid ground after a moment of uncertain footing. I said, "Thank you for this recognition. I am proud of what this program has done for 4,000 children in this county, and I intend to keep building it." Then I stepped back from the podium. My voice had not wavered. I noticed that too. I want to pause here for one more moment, because what happened next in that room happened in the way things happen in rooms when a truth has just been spoken clearly in front of witnesses. If you have ever stood in a public place and had to defend something you built with your own hands, something someone else tried to claim or diminish or take from you, type the word "built" in the comments. Just that word. Because that is what this was about. Not an award. Not recognition. What it was about was the right to say, "I made this," and have it be true. Subscribe if you haven't, and let me know you're out there. Now, back to the story. My mother left the ballroom before the dessert was served. I know because Dana told me. I did not see her go. I was at my table, and Marcus Webb had his hand on the award plaque and was saying something quiet and direct about how long he had watched me work, and I was listening to him the way I had learned to listen to people who meant what they said. Kelsey stayed. I did not expect that. She came to my table at 9:45, after the formal program had ended and the room had loosened into the particular hum of people finishing their wine and finding their coats. She stood at the edge of the table and she looked at me with an expression I had not seen on her face before. Not the bright practiced warmth. Something underneath that. Something that looked, if I am being accurate, like a woman who has just watched something she participated in go very wrong and is trying to understand her own role in it. She said, "I didn't know she was going to do that." I looked at her for a moment. I said, "What did you know?" She was quiet. Then she said, "She told me she had concerns about the attribution. She said she was going to talk to someone on the board quietly before the event. She said it was the right thing to do." I thought she meant a private conversation. I didn't know she was going to stand up there. I said, "Did you know about Sandra Price?" Kelsey said, "She mentioned her name. She said she had been in touch with her." I said, "Sandra Price sent me a text message in October. She wanted me to know that someone had contacted her asking about her time at Dunbar. She told them she had no claim to the framework and had said so. She was not part of this willingly." Kelsey closed her eyes for a second. She said, "I'm sorry, Vivian." I did not say it was all right, because it was not all right. I said, "I know." She left after that. I watched her walk across the emptying ballroom in her good shoes, and I thought about the bleach spot on the hem of the Easter dress, and the sheet cake from the grocery store, and the 11 composition notebooks, and a woman in a blue coat standing in a doorway saying, "There it is." The Foundation's board reviewed the materials in Cecile's envelope over the following 2 weeks. The affidavit was 31 pages. Cecile had documented every working session, every draft, every revision, every institutional communication, from the first pilot classroom in September 2016 through the completion of the third-year evaluation in spring 2019. She had kept copies of my emails to her. She had kept copies of the handwritten notes I had sent her when I didn't want to put things in email, the notes where I worked through problems out loud on paper the way she had taught me to do in those green composition notebooks. She had kept all of it, organized by date, in a system that any archivist would have recognized as the work of someone who understood that records are not bureaucracy. They are truth made durable. The board issued a written statement on November 22 confirming that the Greenville Literacy Leadership Award had been properly given and that the documentation on file fully supported the attribution of the Tate Early Literacy Framework to me. They sent a copy of the statement to the school districts in all 3 counties and to the state literacy office. My mother did not call me. I did not expect her to. My father called on a Sunday afternoon, 3 weeks after the gala. He called from his cell phone, which meant he was not calling from the house, which meant he had driven somewhere to make the call without my mother knowing he was making it. He did not say much. He said he was sorry. He said it the way men like my father say sorry, without quite being able to say what they are sorry for, because saying what they are sorry for would require naming what they allowed. But he said it. And I listened. And I said, "I know, Dad." And I meant it in the way you mean something when you have stopped needing it to be more than it is. I have not spoken to my mother since the night of the gala. That is not a punishment. It is a boundary, and there is a difference. A punishment is something you do to someone else. A boundary is something you do for yourself. I built one program for 4,000 children and I built another one for myself, and both of them required the same thing, clarity about what was real, and the patience to document it. Cecile's letter, the one I read standing at the edge of that stage, began this way. She wrote, "Vivian, if you are reading this, then someone tried to take what you built. I want you to know that I saw you build it. I was there. I kept the records because you were too busy doing the work to keep them yourself, and someone needed to. That is what teachers do. We pay attention. We keep the record. We make sure the truth has somewhere to live." She wrote, "You were never the child they saw. You were always the child I saw. And what I saw was a mind that paid attention to everything and a heart that wanted to use what it understood to help children who were being failed the way you were almost failed. Almost, Vivian. Not all the way. Because you didn't let them." She wrote, "I am leaving you the documentation, and I am leaving you this letter, and I am leaving you the knowledge that I spent 31 years in classrooms, and you are the finest educator I ever watched work. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Not even your mother. Especially not your mother." I read those words standing in the Kellerman Ballroom with 167 people watching, and I did not cry. I read them again in my car in the parking garage at 10:15 that night, and I did cry, for a long time, with my forehead against the steering wheel and the award plaque on the passenger seat beside me, and the white envelope in my lap. I cried for Cecile, and for the green composition notebooks, and for the child who ate the grocery store cake and told her mother it was good. I cried because some things deserve to be cried over, and then I drove home. The program is now in 17 schools. We received a second grant in January, $140,000, from a statewide education fund whose director had been at the gala that night and had called me the following Monday morning. She said she had been planning to reach out for months and that the evening had simply clarified her timeline. The training program Dana and I built has now certified 43 reading specialists across 4 counties. Last spring, third-grade reading scores in our partner schools improved by an average of 26 percentile points, 4 points higher than the first year we measured. I have a photograph on my desk of Cecile in her blue coat, standing in the doorway of my office on Augusta Street, the day we opened. She is looking at the name on the glass. Her expression is not proud, exactly. It is something quieter than proud. It is the expression of a woman who paid attention for 31 years and is watching the attention pay off. I keep the white envelope in the top drawer of my desk now. Not the documents inside, those are filed properly, in the Foundation's records and in my own. Just the envelope, with my name in her handwriting. I keep it because some things you want to be able to touch. If you are watching this and you recognize something in this story, if you know what it is to build something real while the people who were supposed to believe in you looked the other way, if you know what it is to carry documentation because you learned early that the truth needs a witness, I want you to know that I see you. Cecile taught me that the most important thing a mind can do is pay attention. She was right. And she taught me something else, too, something she said to me once on her porch on Alderman Road when I was 26 and exhausted and wondering whether any of it was worth the effort. She said, "Vivian, the work is the answer. Not the recognition. Not the award. Not whether your family comes around. The work is what you built, and what you built is real, and real things last. She was right about that, too. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.